Okay, so we are now at our final panel of the day, but I'm going to do a quick pause because I see 3 of our candidates in the room, and I'm not sure if our other 2 are here. They are here? Wonderful. Okay, I wanted to make sure before I started inviting everybody. So to kick off our last panel for today, which is our gubernatorial candidates, I would like to invite up Rick Thigpen. And Rick is going to be moderating this panel. And as he's coming up, I also want to let everyone know that Mayor Baraka, Senator Bramnick, Congressman Gottheimer, and Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill send their regrets for their inability to join us today due to conflicts. So now, Rick Thigpen is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Citizenship at Public Service Enterprise Group. He will moderate this great panel. Rick was appointed Senior Vice President for Corporate Citizen in 2018, and he oversees advocacy efforts related to public policy, sustainability, and corporate social responsibility. Joining PSE&G in 2007, he previously served as public affairs consultant and co-founded 1868 Public Affairs, offering lobbying and strategic services in New Jersey, New York, and Washington. Rick has a distinguished career in both public and private sectors, including roles as a district director for U.S. Representative Donald Payne and executive director for the New Jersey Democratic State Committee, and currently serves on many boards, including the board of NJBIA. And we're very thankful for you being a trustee. Rick, thank you so much. I'm going to yield the floor to Rick, who's going to introduce our gubernatorial candidates. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to introduce our candidates, ask them to come up on the stage, and I'll do it in alphabetical order. And I'll start with former Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli. Come on up, Jack, and give Jack a round of applause. The Mayor of Jersey City, Steve Fulop. Come on up, Steve. All right, Jack. Shaking hands after, Jack. All right. The morning talk show host on 101.5, Bill Spadia. The president of the NJEA, Sean Spiller. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, Sean. The president of NJEA, Sean Spiller. And our former state Senate president, Steve Sweeney. Come on up, Steve. Okay. I'm going to start with just a couple of little comments, and we're going to get this show on the road. Obviously, today is about the importance of business to New Jersey's economy. 82% of all employment in our great state is from the private sector. Today is a forum, not a debate. This is an opportunity for you all to talk to the business leaders and the voters about your thoughts about how to make our state's economy even better. I want to be fair to each of you. Because of our time is limited, I ask each of you to please keep your responses brief so we can cover as much ground as possible. Don't feel you have to answer each question. I will only give your titles as I've done because I want each of you to introduce yourself and share some relevant information about yourself in the answer to the first question. Please try to keep this opening statement to about 2 minutes. I will start the questions and then open up to the audience later on. We will leave time for 1-minute closing statements. And I will start again in alphabetical order and just say that listening to the conversations today, there's a fair amount of anxiety about the business climate in New Jersey. We know New Jersey has some challenges, high taxes and high costs, and also some great opportunities, an educated workforce and a fairly wealthy state. 68% of the respondents in the Business Outlook survey rated the state's economy as fair or poor. So my first question, I'll start with you, Jack, and we'll go straight down. What policy change would you propose to boost economic growth in New Jersey?
Good morning, everybody, and many thanks to NJBIA for bringing us all together. I think the first thing that... Sorry about that. Yeah. Good to go?
There we go.
Good morning, everybody. Many thanks to NJBIA for bringing us all together, and many thanks for what this great advocacy does on behalf of its members. I think the very first powerful sign that the next governor can do or demonstrate is to reestablish the Department of Commerce, which dissolved under Corazine and was never reestablished under Christie. I think that would send a critically important message that the next administration, next governor, is pro-business. And so that office, I think, would have it would be a commissioner-level position serving in the cabinet, 3 deputy commissioners, one responsible for economic development in North, Central, and South Jersey. I think that, again, would send a very, very important message. The next governor's got to be someone that celebrates the business community. You never hear the current governor celebrate the business community, in my opinion. Yes, he'll say some nice things when he shows up to a chamber event and the like, but their policies have not been pro-business. And I think the other thing that, quite frankly, we need to do to send a very powerful message is to do what Pennsylvania's done. Pennsylvania is cutting their business tax in half. Meanwhile, ours this past January went from 9 to 11.5, which is one of the highest in the nation. So I give my word to the business community as your next governor. I will be the most pro-business governor the state has seen. The entire cabinet will be pro-business. Our state agencies will be there to work in partnership with you. It will not be a police state or a collection agency. And we're going to get New Jersey firing on all cylinders. All the institutional resources are right here. I think just we need a governor and administration that's going to make New Jersey work by celebrating and working in partnership with the business community.
Wow. Mayor Fuller.
So first of all, let me say thank you, Rick, and Michelle, thank you as well. Let me start by saying to all of you that for the last 20 years, you've heard the same thing. You've heard candidates come from both parties and say, we're going to be the most pro-business governor that you've ever seen. And we continue to be in the same position. And I would tell you that the best indicator of what somebody's going to do in the future is what have they done in the past, okay? I'm applying, as we all are, for the job of governor. And basically, you are the interviewer in this process. And I think that the best example of what type of governor I would be and what I would change is what have I done in Jersey City? We have transformed that city to be literally the economic backbone of New Jersey. And it was a very different place when I took office there. We've been business friendly in a smart way. We've been conscious of taxes in a smart way. And most importantly, I think that having the feeling and understanding of how decisions at the governor's office impacts people on municipal government and on the local level is an intangible skill that you have to live it to understand it. Now, look, there's a lot of things that I could tell you that we can change. You could start at the EDA, structurally how they approach things, where the barriers to entry are, how you have to do paperwork to get things moving, where they incentivize things. I think there's a lot of things that you can do on that front, ultimately to change the climate in the state so that you feel better about doing work here. I think it is possible, but you got to change the way you think about people that you elect. And you got to say that it is a job interview and look at their past experiences that are directly related to the job. And I would say that if you look at Jersey City as an example, which has been the sole growing place in New Jersey of that type of magnitude, you'd be hard-pressed to argue that our skill set and understanding of the business community is second to none. Thank you with that, Rick, and I'll pass it over to Bill Spadia.
Bill Spadia.
3 things that have to be done immediately. Cut taxes, end all of the overregulation, and create an environment where you can hire the people that you need. You know, we talk about cutting taxes, and actually Mayor Fulop had a great point that any politician can come up here and tell you what they're going to do. And I look back over my last 10 years on the radio, and some of you listen to me in the morning, and I have dedicated every Monday, we call it Small Business Monday. And what I do is I give up time. I give up that precious real estate, that very expensive real estate on the radio show to allow businesses to call in and get a free plug to stimulate their business. And why? Well, because I value the 2 million people, 2 million New Jerseyans that work in small businesses across the state. They need a break. The employers need a break, but it's not just the small business. The big businesses need a break too. And when it comes to corporate taxes, you know, yeah, it's outrageous. 11.5% when Pennsylvania is at 4.99% over the next couple of years. But it's not just Pennsylvania. States across the country have cut taxes. When you look at Pennsylvania, you look at Indiana, look at North Carolina. These are states that cut their corporate business tax, and immediately in year 1, people moved into those states. Jobs were created, businesses expanded, and yes, with a tax cut, tax revenue increased. And that's something that a lot of the pundits and politicians are afraid of. But it's beyond that. You know, we look at what happened in Pennsylvania over the last, just the last week. You got a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature. They got together and they are cutting the time for licensing, permitting from weeks and months down to days. That's the kind of efficient government we need. And then lastly, when it comes to helping all of you hire the people you need, we've got to stop this mentality that every kid has to go to college. We've got to develop an investment into career and technical education. We need to talk about the skilled trades. We need to focus on manufacturing and retail and hospitality and all of these things. There are plenty of jobs out there that kids could get out of high school and go right into a career that could pay them $80, $90, $100,000 a year without the six-figure debt with college. So I believe what we really need in New Jersey is a mindset change. We need to be pro-business instead of pro-government.
Sean Spiller. Yeah, well, thank you. And certainly to Michelle, Rick, to you, and certainly to everybody here, I want to thank you for giving me the time to be here today. You asked the question, and I'll just answer it with the framing of just who I am and kind of the lens that I look at everything through. For me personally, my parents chose to immigrate to this country. My mom's from Jamaica, my dad's from New Zealand, and they picked the United States. They specifically picked New Jersey because of a number of reasons. My mom, being a math teacher in Jamaica, said we want to go to a place where we've got the best schools, and New Jersey fit the bill. Wanted a place where my dad could find employment, although he had to travel all over to get it, and New Jersey fit the bill. But even as a kid, I knew that New Jersey was a hard place for my parents to afford, right? Just barely able to kind of get by and support my brother and I. And as I talk to residents throughout the state and I speak to all of you, I think the answer is the same, right? Anytime we look and say we're going to look to help this group over that group or change the structure, that structure that impacts one over another, we're missing the point. New Jersey is a great place. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to do business, but it's a hard place to afford. It's the hard place to make sure that your bottom line works. And as I look and talk to every single resident, I said the same thing to you. We've got to look at a number of things to make sure that this state remains competitive, continues to draw people to this state, but also looks at your bottom line expenses and talks about everything in a comprehensive, collective way. Because it's not just how much do you pay in taxes, and that's important. And certainly I commit to looking at that to make sure we're competitive in the region in terms of the taxes that we pay. But it also matters in terms of what are we doing about the rising healthcare costs and how do we help solve that and fix that problem so that it's not a cost burden on you, but also the people that you employ and bring into the state. How do we make sure we continue to maintain those top schools so that the workforce that we're producing can meet your needs and the needs now and the needs in the future, but also draw that top quality candidate to make sure that we're here? How do we get rid of that red tape? And I say that as the mayor said, as a mayor myself, and I'll just say Montclair's doing pretty great as well, Mayor Folt. But here's a place where we've seen those challenges, especially during COVID, and had to figure out a way with shrinking budgets. When we faced a loss of dollars of people community in the city, we figured out a way to maintain our AAA bond rating, support our small businesses, get rid of so much of that red tape that was in the way, those redundancies that also cost you money, the time that costs you money. We've got to look at all these pieces comprehensively to say, when we eliminate those costs, right, one way or another, you can keep more dollars to reinvest in your business, make sure that your bottom line's doing well. And that's the same thing for every family in New Jersey as well. We've got to make this place more affordable. We've got to make sure we continue to draw people to this state, celebrate the great things that we have, but continue to allow the growth that we all know that we need.
Senator Sweeney.
Rich, me having a different seat, is that like an omen? The biggest guy here in the smallest seat. I get it. I love you, PSCNG. But, most of the people in this room know me. I got into politics because I had a daughter born with a disability and just didn't like the way people with disabilities are treated. And worked my way through government. I wasn't a mayor, but I was a freeholder director. It was similar I always looked at. It's like being the mayor of the county. But with me, you have someone that's not afraid of the tough fights and has done tough fights, had fight with Sean's organization, and then work with his organization to fix the healthcare plan, right? I was very excited to see the survey, Michelle, that you guys did, because there's a bright spot. People wanting to leave New Jersey has gone down from 66% to 54%. And there's reasons for that. We did a 2% property tax cap. I see Andrew there. We eliminated income tax for retirees. That's huge. It's about $3,000 a year that nobody talks about. But seniors making up to $100,000 don't pay income tax anymore. We lowered the sales tax. I'm proud of that. And we also eliminated the estate tax. My concern right now is everyone's saying, we got to find more money, we got to tax more. We got to calm down. We got a spending problem. And we need to slow down and prioritize what our needs are. And by doing that, you'll get this place under order to where if you grow the economy, you get people going to work. Like marijuana, when we legalize marijuana, we have the lowest tax rate in the nation. Can't say that many times in New Jersey. But I would rather have a lower sales tax and be collecting income tax from people that are going to work. That's why we did that. Sports betting. We're in the #1 sports betting market in the nation. Oh, by the way, we have the lowest sales tax in the nation. Some of these things do correlate, really, they're tied. So we just got to focus on getting our priorities in order. Government has a responsibility. It absolutely has a responsibility, but it shouldn't be everything all the time to everyone.
All right, Steve, thank you. And Steve, we're going to stay with you and work back this way in the second round. And we know you can handle the adversity of the little chair. We're not worried about you. So, in NJBIA's 66th Annual Business Outlook Survey just released, they asked respondents to list the action a new governor could take to have a positive impact on the business community. The overwhelming #1 response was reduce property taxes. Can you envision ways to lower property taxes for businesses, or do you think you could reduce costs in other ways?
Listen, here's the issue. We keep saying we want something different. We want lower taxes, but we don't do it. We're not willing to do anything different. Right? I'm proud. Gloucester County, we closed all of our jails. We got prisoners. We have them. We just send them to places that have empty cells. And we save over $20 million a year. So we're providing the same service with savings. So it's just looking at things differently. The state of New Jersey does not do property taxes. It's local, municipal, schools. That's where the property taxes are developed. We send most of our money back to them to help them. That's what we do. I'm so proud that we were finally able to get the full funding with educational aid, the school funding formula. We finally got there after all these years. So, what it comes down to is we got to prioritize what we want to spend. If you're going to create a new program, you got to be able to pay for it. You got to do multi-year budgeting, Rich. This is consensus forecasting. I passed it once, got vetoed. Governor has to give up a little bit of authority to make the budget process better, because the way we're doing budgets don't make sense. You create a program, you hire people. The next year, the funding's not there. You got to get rid of the people. That's not any way to run a government. So we actually really have to rethink the way we're doing this. But most importantly is multi-year budgeting and consensus forecasting.
President Spiller?
Yeah, look, I think the Senate President is spot on when we talk about it, and I say this as a mayor as well. When we talk about the investments that come from the state into your town, your municipality, that's a reduction in property taxes, right? And I think what we've constantly gotten in that conversation around, I say it as a mayor again, is looking at the state saying, hey, you've got dedicated funds for this. You've got dollars that are supposed to come to us and help us in this other area, and yet you're not delivering, right? And I think a lot of those unfunded mandates, a lot of the different requirements, spaces where we know and some issues, safety and concerns, we want to make sure we're there, but there's a way we can do it with efficiencies. Certainly making sure that, as we look at a comprehensive, government as a whole, we're saying to ourselves, look, how do we cut costs? How do we, look at these, again, redundancies that I see? How do you make sure that some of the emerging technologies, AI being a good example, can maybe integrate systems that don't talk to one another, but yet we don't have the dollars to improve yet at the state level? How do we cut some of those costs so we can take those dollars and send back into our communities, right? Because every time you'll hear it, not just from businesses, from residents as well, high property taxes. And when you hear that, though, again, I think it's a call for affordability. How do we make sure things are affordable? If I can't afford to pay my rent, right? If I'm a business owner, that's a problem on your bottom line. If I can't afford to, live in my home, if I'm a resident, those are all cost pressures, right? And if we could reduce those pieces in state government, put those dollars back into our communities, we don't have to rely so much on property taxes. States have a much more broad array of ways that we can, generate revenues and get dollars in, much more equitable systems at our disposal, as opposed to property taxes that we know often overburden individuals who are either just trying to, start out or stay in a home, or just trying to start our business and make sure they can, retain that space that they want to be in. So these are challenges that we, again, have to look at comprehensively. We've got to do in collaboration. I'm tired as an educator, people always talking to us and telling us what they're going to do instead of bringing us into the conversation. So that's a key piece of what I certainly would do. But I think it's looking at all of these pieces together, understanding their connectivity, that are going to make the difference.
Interesting. Bill Spady.
When Governor Christie left office, the budget was about $35 billion. Last year, we saw a budget of more than $56 billion. New Jersey has an enormous spending problem. And the problem with the spending, which of course is passed on to everyone, your businesses, your customers, your homeowners, everyone is paying more than what would be considered their fair share. And then you have to ask, what are you getting in return? So a couple of things on the tax side. We've got to cut taxes in order to stimulate economic growth. Not only should we cut our corporate business tax down to 4% or lower, I think we ought to go back to a great idea from former Congressman Jack Kemp, talked about enterprise zones, create enterprise zones in our urban areas where we offer zero taxes in terms of corporate tax to bring businesses in. We should have a governor that can get on the phone and start cold calling businesses across the country to say, come to New Jersey, we want you, we've got the tax program for you. But then let's look at the spending side, because we could talk about the gimmicks that are out there, whether we cut the sales tax by 1/8 of a point, or whether or not we offer the Stay NJ program, which is really just taking money from here and putting it over here at a cost of more than $2 billion a year. We can't afford any more gimmicks. We've got to cut the taxes and we've got to cut our spending. But then you have to ask, how do you cut the spending? Well, take a look at just the illegal immigration problem. You're looking at a $7 billion cost a year to New Jersey because we have nearly 900,000 illegals in our state. You're paying for that. $6.2 billion in Medicaid payments. You're paying for that. So the first thing we've got to do is end the sanctuary state. We've got to rescind that 2018 sanctuary state executive order, rescind the 2019 Immigrant Trust Directive, and reset the clock. You know, Senator Sweeney brought up a good point about prisons, but I look at it the opposite way. You could close your jails to save money, or you could monetize your jails the way the Bergen County Jail was monetized by holding federal detainees. They were making $5 million a year from the federal government. There's a way to monetize it. Why aren't we talking about monetizing New Jersey Transit assets? Why aren't we talking about changing the way we fund our education and dealing with the pension problem, the $175 billion in unfunded future liabilities? They did it in Wisconsin, Act 10, and they took a budget deficit of $3.6 billion and turned it into a $900 million surplus in 1 year. Now, if you can start to do those practical ideas in New Jersey, look at the Rutgers budget alone. I'll just tell you a quick story. So it was actually cheaper for my wife Jody and I to send our daughter to London for school, room, board, and tuition, than it would have been to send her to Rutgers in-state. Yet Rutgers University has a $5.1 billion budget, and if you look at their budget, 24 cents on the dollar comes from the New Jersey taxpayers. It's $1 billion a year. That ought to be line item vetoed on day one. We've got to get control of spending. You solve the illegal immigration problem by going back to enforcing federal detainer orders, working with ICE. You know, I've been to the border. I've been on the ride-alongs with ICE. This is something that can be done in the first year, and you're talking about saving billions of dollars. This doesn't get done without tax cuts to generate economic growth and massive spending cuts. We ought to be monetizing the assets of New Jersey Transit. There are at least $8 to $10 billion that you could look at in this current budget to say we could cut that and pass that on as savings to the taxpayers. But I'll leave you with this last thing. Outside of illegal immigration, it's our pension problem that we have. We're going to have to force the NJBIA to sit down at the table and have a real conversation about what has happened in other states where they found that if you restructure the pensions, you can not only save money, teacher salaries can go up, and you can alleviate the burden on local taxpayers, which are homeowners and small businesses. But we need to think bold, and we need to not be afraid of the names they're going to call us when we go and make these tough decisions.
I can go.
Yes, sir, Mayor Phil.
I have a few more things to add, but I'll wait. I see how you brought the immigration thing into that whole cousin. Let me start by reiterating what I said earlier. For 20 years, you've heard the same thing about taxes and spending and budgets and reform. Same exact thing. You rewind 5 years, same conversation. 10 years, same conversation. Some of you have been here much longer, and you hear the same thing. Now we know for certain that there's too much government in New Jersey, and there's layers and schools and municipalities, and that consolidation is necessary, consolidation in different departments. There hasn't been the will or appetite to do that in Trenton is the reality. And unless you culturally change how Trenton operates, that will continue to be the common thread there and nothing will get done. You could talk about unfunded mandates. I go back to what I said earlier, is that being a mayor, similar to Sean, we understand unfunded mandates as well as you in the private sector understand unfunded mandates. Most of my family is in the private sector and entrepreneurs, so I understand that component of it. But certainly see when Trenton says something that's well-intentioned and it's a cost to us that we have to figure out how that impacts us. Unless you have an appetite for boldness down there, nothing will change in Trenton. You pay, at the end of the day, you pay a corruption tax to live and operate in New Jersey. What do I mean by that? I mean by that the structure of government is inherently tainted in a way that it is never incentivized to make those changes that you desperately need and that taxpayers desperately need. We've had a conversation over the last year about ballot reform. Some of you follow that very closely. Some of you follow that from the peripheral. Why is that important? It's important because when you don't have competitive primaries and you don't have competitive elections, you get the status quo down in Trenton that is more interested in the title and the job than actual meaningful reform. And that, at the end of the day, is the thread that has to change to start if you are ever going to get the cultural change that you need to do bold things down there that you know aren't necessary. We could talk all day about spending. I mean, spending is definitely a problem. Last month, the NJSEA allocates $7 million to have, I guess, SummerSlam or allocate dollars towards that. A reasonable person would say probably not the best use of funds when you're talking about the budget gaps here. I think we would all agree upon that. You will never get change until you get change to the structure of government and accountability. And accountability ultimately means accountability to the public and accountability to you as well. And that is why ballot change and change of structure and primaries are inherently important. I'm running a different type of campaign. Some of you might have read about it, and we're trying to create that accountability because I think it's inherently important if you are going to be a different type of governor that inherently is going to do things like constitutional conventions and consolidation and actually deal outside of those special interest bosses. You need to create a different sort of culture where that corruption tax that you all pay, which is basically the status quo, needs to change. And that's where it starts. And then everything else that I think was set up here, minus the focus on immigration as the core problem, but everything else that was set up here, I think is valid. But you need cultural change in order to get that done. It starts really at the ballot. Turn over to Jack.
Yes, sir, Jack. Rick, I got this terrible liability in politics of answering the question. I think it was about property tax.
Yes, it was.
Yes. So, property taxes are high in New Jersey. They're highest in the nation for three reasons, primarily. Number one, we're a sprawl state. Sprawl is terribly expensive. And I believe we need to stop sprawl in its tracks. That doesn't mean I'm not going to encourage economic development in the suburbs. But we really need to direct our population growth toward our cities, and I hope we'll get to the terrible need, the desperate need here in the state for urban renewal. The second reason why property tax is so high in the state is we have 600 school districts. Now, I've learned the hard way as a county commissioner not to force the consolidation of towns or districts. But what I will do is incentivize the hell out of it. We did that, and the former state treasurers here, Andrew Seidman Aristoff, when I was in the legislature, Princeton Borough and Princeton Township combined. And the Christie administration, with my help, picked up 100% of the upfront costs to do that, which is what helped incentivize the merger of those two towns and an annual operating savings of $3 to $4 million in property taxes. So that's the other reason. But the third reason why property taxes are so high is something that the governor can have direct control over, and that's the way that we distribute state aid to schools. Okay, the school funding formula we currently have, and the current administration always wants to brag about the fact that it's fully funded. But why would you fully fund a flawed formula? This year alone, it left 140 school districts shortchanged. 140 districts around the state got less aid than the year before, despite the fact that they didn't even have declining enrollments. There's something terribly wrong with this current school funding formula. So on day one under Governor Cettarelli, we get a new formula. And if we need to make a new argument before the state Supreme Court, we will do that, because here's what no one is ever going to justify to me. If you live in town A and I'm in town B, and my cost per pupil when we divide the number of students in the school budget is anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000, which I believe is the sweet spot, and in your town the cost per pupil with all that state aid is $34,000, you're never going to justify to me why your town needs $16,000 to $18,000 more per student. We need a better and more equitable distribution of state aid to schools that has direct impact on your property taxes.
Wow. Okay. Let's keep moving. And Bill Spady, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to try to bring you out of your shell a little bit. You're right.
I'm a little shy.
Yeah. We're going to talk about innovation now. The names Seth Boyd, Newark's very own, Thomas Edison, and Bell Labs are part of our long, rich history in New Jersey of innovation. New businesses create lots of jobs in our state. If you were the governor of New Jersey, what role would fostering innovation play in your administration?
Well, I think when you talk about innovation, we're talking about launching new businesses. We don't want to just check a box and have the bragging rights so that we can be at a ceremony at the New Jersey Hall of Fame and pat ourselves on the back and say, wow, that was great. What we need to do is bring in real industry, real job creation, and alleviate problems across the board in terms of increasing our tax revenue, increasing employment, and alleviating that burden that right now is put on everyone. The first industry that needs to be stepped up is manufacturing. You know, right now we've got 230,000 manufacturing jobs in New Jersey, but you go back to 1990, it was 540,000. Just as far as back as 2000, it was 420,000. And it has dropped. We had a couple of years where it went up a little bit. But the reality is we have a crisis in this state that we can't even get basic parts for machinery before we get into the next innovation, the next, form of transportation or energy. If we're really talking about innovation, then we need to put that on the private sector. Innovators are in the private sector. They're not in government. And the best thing that government can do is stimulate these kinds of ideas. You're never going to get the next great idea in New Jersey if we continue to drive the innovators to places like South Carolina, Delaware, even Ohio, and other places like that. You're never going to get that. The best thing we can do is open the door. And the only way to open the door is you've got to alleviate the tax burden and the regulatory burden. You know, I was meeting with some of the skilled trades and some of the folks that fix our roads and build our bridges. And they said there is right now a 7-year delay from idea to shovel in the ground. That's just completely unacceptable. We got to get the basic stuff done. A friend of mine runs a tree stump grinding business, small company in Morris County. And he said, you know, we compete with a lot of these big companies that can go and invest in several $100,000 pieces of machinery, talk about innovation, to grind a stump in seconds instead of minutes and hours. Well, one of these big companies, his competitor, bought this $200,000 machine, and for want of a $14 part that they could not get from China, they had to farm all that out to the small companies. So when I look at that and I'm thinking, what do we really need in New Jersey? We got to build things again. And in order to build things, you got to bring people in. In order to bring people in, we've got to lower that budget way down from $56 billion. When we talk about school funding, we can talk about illegal immigration, which we know is costing us $7 billion a year. But we ought to talk about why are we addressing how we fund our schools instead of addressing what our schools are spending money on. I see far too much waste and abuse and overlap. And the idea that it costs $30,000 to educate a kid, you know, I live in Princeton, New Jersey. Our cost of educating a kid is around $24,000, $25,000. But if you take that same student and put him in a charter school, it comes down to about $14,000. Huge difference, higher graduation rate, higher college placement. So I think the challenge that we have is we need to be innovative in government and open up the doors to things like school choice to lower those costs. And once we allow American ingenuity, the American passion, entrepreneurship to take hold in New Jersey, there's no stopping us. We should be the economic mecca of this country. And right now, we're dead last.
Sean Spiller.
Well, thank you. Look, I think one of the obvious places that we look at when we talk about innovation, I think we look at the green economy, and certainly, Governor Murphy's council on a green economy kind of laid out a little bit of a roadmap of where things potentially could go. We're talking about the number of jobs, 300,000 over the next 10 years. That's an important space that I think we want to be leaders in. This is a place where we've got to obviously integrate that with our workforce development and certainly training up individuals as they're graduating to be able to compete in those spaces and be ready. But I also think when we talk about innovation, we're also talking about things that are affecting every one of you right now. I mentioned before AI and some of the other pieces, and And if you're not innovating right now within your sector, within your space, then you're going to be left behind, right? There are efficiencies to be had. There's better customer relation and service to move forward with. All of these pieces, I think, are important when we talk about innovation. But I do think there's a role that government can play here, because oftentimes when you talk about a small or mid-sized business, there could be a competitive disadvantage when you're trying to compete with somebody who's larger, who's able to kind of roll out or train employees or test out the latest technologies, where government can, in public-private partnerships, say, hey, listen, we're going to work together in these spaces. By the way, we need it in government as well to make sure we're interfacing with the public, interfacing with all of you in a more efficient way. But anything that we're learning there, the trainings that we're doing, we want to include you as part of that, so you're getting those benefits as well at a reduced cost to yourselves, right? So I think there's a lot we can do in terms of innovation, and specifically including us as partners in that work. I think that's an important space that we look at. But I also do want to mention a couple of things that have been said here that I think are important. When we talk about just dollars, right? And I do want to go back to that in a second, just the cost that everyone has. When I hear a few things that are mentioned that are just, I think, part of the problem, right? When we talk about a pension system, and I think the Senate President you mentioned before, we're so happy to finally get that to a place that's funded. We're paying $7 billion because we were irresponsible, right? The yearly cost on this thing is under $600 million. We're paying $7 billion because somebody sat up here for years of both parties and said, I've got some way that we're going to take the dollars and do something else. That's not some future benefit. That's what we owe. And I always think to myself, what could we be doing with $7 billion right now as a state? And I'm very worried that it's very easy to stand in or sit in front of any room and say, oh, look, there's a place we should go start taking out of that, because that bill will come due, but it will become due after we're all done with our terms as governor, right? Or whatever that would look like. And it's going to be each and every one of you, every one of us as taxpayers who are paying that, right? These are, I think, things that we always have to be honest about and say, this is the big money, right? This is the big money. It's irresponsibility that has gotten us in this place. And I'm really proud that we have always, at the local level, said, no. While we work on things and there are challenges, we got to invest and we got to support and meet our obligations. And that's an important piece of it. And when I hear things like, school choice, charters, those things that do not have a higher success rate, I say, look, we've got to keep the dollars that we have and invest it in our communities, because every dime you take out of that school system is an additional property tax you have to pay. It's an additional tax that we all have to absorb to make sure that those schools can still meet the needs of all of our students, every single one of our students, including our special needs students and others that charter schools aren't taking, right? So we have to be real about these conversations and understand that the connectivity between every single one of these pieces is important. And if we want the dollars to be able to invest in things like a green economy, if we want the dollars to be able to take advantage of what President Biden was able to do with the terms of manufacturing, bring it back into our country, if we want to make sure we're capturing all of those pieces, we've got to talk about everything in a comprehensive way, and also not fall back to some of the gimmicks, I'll call them, of the past, where we are irresponsible and it cost all of us $7 billion today instead of $600 million.
Okay, Steve Sweeney.
I'm going to say something I don't think anyone would ever believe. Bill, I agree with you on something. Manufacturing. And I was proud that we created a manufacturing caucus to focus on the challenges that our manufacturers have. They're true small businesses. They're about 35, 34 people shops. And making it easier for them to get established and grow is very important. And the legislature can do good things or they can do bad things. That's, when they think they're doing something good and they put more regulation on an industry, that's a problem. I agree with Sean, the green economy. Absolutely agree with the green economy. That's why we did RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. That's why we did the SRACs to create the solar industry, where there's 7,000 or 8,000 people working in that industry now. And offshore wind. We'll see what happens with that with the new president. But the whole purpose of offshore wind was job creation and manufacturing. Getting the jobs here, that's what we wanted. We wanted to build things in the United States, but more importantly, we wanted to build them in New Jersey. Now, we need to invest in higher education. When you talk about migration of dollars leaving, we send more kids out of this state than any other state in the nation, 35,000. Now, these are kids that have great education, thanks to Sean's teachers. These are the brightest kids coming out of this anywhere in the country, and they're leaving because we don't have the facilities. We did a bond initiative under Governor Christie. It was the first bond initiative for higher education in 28 years. And, that investment paid off. We restructured, and you got to be willing to take on tough things. We restructured higher education. It was one hell of a battle. Rutgers didn't have a medical component to their system. By giving them Robert Wood Johnson, they're going to get $1 billion of research dollars this coming year. They used to get $200 million. So making smart investments in areas, New Jersey is only got a high economy because of our workforce. We have more professors and engineers. We got a lot of smart people here. We got to keep them here. So we got to invest in the things that creates that workforce.
How about that? Jack. People will locate, entrepreneurs, innovators will locate where it is they believe they can be successful. And I think the way to make people believe and know they can be successful here in New Jersey is, number one, adopt Delaware's bylaws for corporate governance. And Nevada did it about a dozen years ago. It's been hugely successful in Nevada. So let's adopt Delaware's bylaws for corporate governance. Let's cut the business tax, as Pennsylvania did, in half. Let's put a capital gains tax rate in place. Let's allow for the carry forward of capital losses. Let's not tax the first $100,000 of business income on a sole proprietorship. Let's not have payroll taxes on the first $100,000 of payroll for a sole proprietorship. Let's not tax the gain on the sale of a family-owned business. Those are all fiscally responsible. As an MBA CPA and someone who's been a two-time business owner, as were my parents and my grandparents, I've experienced all these things. Those are all fiscally responsible things that would change the perception of New Jersey overnight. The other thing is the labor force. I think there needs to be, and there will be under Governor Cettarelli, a more dynamic relationship between the Department of Labor and the Department of Education. The Department of Labor should be telling the Department of Labor, and my Department of Commerce will be telling the Department of Education, what are the fields in which we are seeing a drought? Where do we need more people to go into these fields so that employers can have the workforce that they need? I mean, these are some very practical things that other states have done. With regard to the brain drain, dirty little secret about New Jersey. We do a great job of graduating our K through 12 students, but those that go out of state to college, New Jersey leads the nation in the fewest that come back. Missouri put in a program that I love. Okay, if you go to Missouri from out of state, you go to one of their state colleges, of course you're paying out of state tuition. But subsequent to graduation, if you have 3 years of W-2 wages from a Missouri employer, guess what Missouri does? It reimburses you what the difference was between in-state and out-of-state tuition. I love that idea. How simple is that? To get people from out of state that attend college here to stay here after they graduate from one of our colleges. And by the way, if you're a New Jersey resident who stays here after you graduate, how about the first year of W-2 wages is income tax-free? I mean, I believe these are all fiscally responsible and they're compelling ideas that can change the perception of New Jersey overnight and give innovators and entrepreneurs confidence that they could be successful right here in New Jersey. Steve?
Thank you, Rick. Let me start by saying, I mean, as a Democrat, I think I have a fairly clear track record of being honest and fair with my assessment, as at least I see it, with Governor Murphy. Good things he's done, bad things he's done, been critical of, been public on them, and I think that is true to who I am. You know, when he took office, he spoke about innovation in new industries. And I think there is some credit to be given to him, but there's also some examples over there. He clearly invested in wind as a new opportunity. Cannabis was a new opportunity. The film industry was a new opportunity. All things that he spoke about earlier, dug into, leaned into, and deserves credit. But I also think that there is an opportunity to learn from that. The cannabis situation has been in many ways an absolute disaster. It's taken long time to get basic regulations out there. We still are unclear on how it works. The film industry, if you think about kind of how we've incentivized that and how we've created clarity long-term, it's incremental. So if you're an investor into that business, you only see it in small increments, and the certainty of a business is really kind of paramount to whether you invest or you don't invest. I go back to what I said in the first two questions. I know about those things better than most because we have the largest cannabis space in the state of New Jersey, in Jersey City, and we've done it by not picking winners and losers like every other municipality. We let the market decide, not creating artificial barriers, and letting it move forward based on who has the best product and the best service and the best resources. The film industry, we have the largest film industry in the state of New Jersey. Jersey City opened up under us as well. So I see what that's about as well and the challenges around that. When you think about investment in innovation, the one thing I would differ with some of the points up here is that I don't think you should be targeted specifically on industries, on winners and losers. I think that's a very, very hard thing to do, and you inherently end up right in some situations and grossly wrong in other situations. I think you can do things to create a big opportunity for a lot of different industries and have the best winners and the best people succeed. I think the EDA is inherently flawed. I think you need wholesale change on how and who they incentivize. They are not focused on small entrepreneurs. They are focused on big corporations and subsidies moving 500 jobs from New York to New Jersey, or sometimes even around New Jersey. I think that is entirely misguided. And I think that a governor, whoever it is in the next term, needs to think about that and say, we need to refocus on innovation and the small person, because that is the biggest job creator in the state of New Jersey. The second thing I would tell you is I do agree with Jack's points about the accounting and the taxes and selling capital losses. All of those things are very, very important. There isn't an entrepreneur in the world that doesn't start a business with dreams of a massive exit. That's the nature of what they do, okay? They have big ideas and they had, someday I will exit this for X and I will be sitting pretty, hopefully, in New Jersey. And if New Jersey isn't a place that incentivizes that first entrepreneur to want to be here in everything they do, you will never see innovation here. So I think Jack's point is valid. And then I think the EDA change is super valid. And you can't pick and choose winners and losers. It will never work. You need to have a broad policy approach and let the market decide ultimately how that's going to work out.
All right, Steve Fuller, we're going to stay with you for the next round. In New Jersey, we have the highest concentration of scientists and engineers and the second highest concentration of information and communications technology workers in the country. How would your administration view the importance of our workforce development pipeline to our state's future economic success?
I mean, look, I think I don't need to take a lot of time on this because I just spoke about it in some detail about investment in broad approach, particularly around innovators and small businesses, entrepreneurs. I mean, we have a tremendous talent pool here. I think that's been well documented. We have great higher education in universities, and I think they need some reform on their costs and how they work as far as retaining people. I think we need some reform on matching jobs to degrees, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, I think that if you go back to my statement earlier, and I don't want to take too much time because I see the 10 minutes left over here, but I think that if you go back to my statement earlier on incentivizing innovation, that inherently is going to be those same types of people in the 21st century economy. I mean, we started to convene these AI roundtables via the governor's office, which I think are well-intentioned. You need to think a little bit beyond that, what the actionable step is and how we're going to move beyond buzzwords of AI and whatnot. But you do have a talent pool here, and if you are using tax incentives, as was touched on by Jack, you're using the EDA properly, I think you will get those people to stay here and kind of invest and be part of this.
All right, Jack.
Yeah, the professionals you mentioned, Rick, are staying put if we create an environment here in New Jersey where companies want to stay and companies want to come. And I've already talked about all the various ways to do that. I do think we need to do a better job in New Jersey at workforce development. That gets back to the more dynamic relationship between the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. I also think the federal funds that come our way that are ending up at our community colleges, I think that we could do a better job of making sure that our community colleges are working in partnership with industry when it comes to workforce development. I'd also like to see more of that money go to our technical institutes. I got to tell you, as I go around the state, one thing that I hear of all the time from employers that employ blue-collar people, I can't find this trade, I can't find that trade. And I preach this all the time because as a father of four, one of which went into the trades, we were in a damn good school district. But I need to tell you, he was treated like a second-class citizen because he wasn't going to college. And I understand that our high schools want to talk about the average SAT score and what the college acceptance list is and where the valedictorian is going. But just once I want to show up to high school graduation and there's two valedictorians. The one that's going to the Ivy League the next day and the one that's starting as a $55,000 electrician the next day because we gave them vocational training through high school. Not all kids want or need to go to college. My son is a very successful licensed diesel mechanic. So again, with regard to the workforce, creating that environment where companies want to stay, Companies want to take root here. Companies want to come here from other states. I think there's a real opportunity to get companies to come here from New York. But also at the blue-collar jobs, we've got to do a better job of promoting workforce development programs that lend themselves to the trades as well. Because all the industries that depend on blue-collar workers, if we're allowed to still call them that, I do, we've got to help them out as well.
All right, Steve Sweeney.
What was the question again, Rich? I was listening to these guys.
About workforce pipeline, the importance of the workforce development pipeline to business success in New Jersey.
Well, I agree a whole lot with what Jack just said. I'm a union iron worker. You know what I mean? I didn't go to college. I went through the trades. And when you look at studies for people, like for employment, a lot of people have changed careers 8 to 12 times during their lifetime. If you join the ironworkers, you can stay an ironworker till it's time to retire. You know what I mean? Which is a good job. Plumbers, who isn't always looking for a good plumber or an electrician? You know what I mean? Those guys make good money, guys and gals, because, you know, our trades are, have women and men in them now. It's a great thing. You know, we really went after trying to get more women into our trades. But investing, Rich, in a smart way in higher education is critically important. New Jersey is the medicine chest. We hear that, right? We're the medicine chest of the nation. But they're expanding in other places. They're based here. But if you go to MIT, they built $1.5 billion worth of investment around MIT. So I look at higher education as a business, honestly, where you can generate the types of workforce that will bring the businesses to this state. You know, the thing that upset me, like I said, the most is when I started looking at this, because New Jersey has the problems. But I would really appreciate when we do something right, that the business community champions it. You know what I mean? Because you're the leaders. You're the ones that are out there. People read the books, read the journals. New Jersey, the BIA or Chamber of Commerce says New Jersey's horrible. Well, anyone looking at that, Rick, is not going to want to come here. Now, we do have challenges, but I believe we got the greatest state in the nation. It's the most educated, it's the most diverse. I'm a lifelong resident. I will be here till the day I die, and then they'll plant me here. But this is a place, because I love this state, and we all should care about the state, and everyone up here I know loves this state. We all have just different ideas, but making the smart investments, like I said, I was there for a long time. Nothing changes overnight. That's the problem in New Jersey. When we fix the pension problem, everyone's like, what's going to be fixed tomorrow? No, it wasn't broke overnight. It takes time. And we did work together. And I was proud we were able to get the funding. And think about how heartbreaking it is that we're paying $7.2 billion for something that should be $600 million. That's a lot of money. But we had an obligation to make that pension payment. Thank you.
All right. Sean. Yeah, thank you. Listen, as I answer this, I answer it, yes, as a candidate for governor, but quite frankly, as an educator as well. And just telling you that you absolutely have a partner in this in terms of the educational space, which is what we're going to need when we talk about workforce development and preparing for the jobs of the future, preparing for the jobs, not just in the short and midterm, but long-term as well, an ever-changing dynamic in terms of what we have got to shift to and change to. These are important conversations that you have to continuously have. I think you have to be very mindful of the data that you're seeing when we talk about where are the needs, where are the shortages, where are we hopefully directing some of our students to say there are career opportunities, whether it's healthcare, as we're seeing shortages now, education included, these spaces where we say, here's job opportunities, or this sector or that sector. We want to make sure we're doing that as real time as possible. And we want to make sure we're doing it with not only coordination with our higher ed, but also K-12 as well, as we have these conversations. But look, I think as we talk about this, inherently, we are a well-educated state. That's an important piece of this. We want to make sure we continue that. We want to maintain that. We want to make sure this is a place where people who are coming in from out of state do want to raise their families. That helps bring in that high talent that we need here as well specifically. But all of these pieces, again, Government has a role where we can incentivize, we can support, and we can, quite frankly, make sure that especially our smaller, medium-sized businesses are able to take advantage of some of the pieces that government can help support with, right? And workforce development is a huge space on it, right? Education is a huge part of the budget. It's a huge place that we need to focus. It is constantly ever changing. But this is one of those ones I mentioned before, whether it's AI, whether it's green economy, whether it's the changes that you're going to need. You want to be able to have somebody who's coming to you that you can train up in a rapid way and get ready to go. And as the Senate President said, we've got to work with our unions specifically, especially as Jack said, if we talk about our trades, unions are often the ones that are doing that training in the trades, right? They're often the ones that are saying, much like you do in your businesses, saying, hey, when we get somebody, they have a basic skill set, but we're going to make sure they're ready to go, right? So we've got to make sure we're working in partnership there as well. So workforce development is a huge piece of it. We want to maintain our advantage that we have. We absolutely do have one in terms of our top quality, educated people that we are producing for our workforce. But we also know we want to continue to draw people in, support businesses, serve as innovative spaces where people can look at, work with our unions to have the trainings that we have in all the sectors as well.
Outstanding. Bill?
Well, let me first say that I'm thrilled that after my advocating for this for 10 years that, Jack, you agree with me that it's time to remove the stigma of people that don't want to go to college. There should absolutely be a weight put on all of those folks that want to get involved in the skilled trades. The question is, how do you do it? Now, as an entrepreneur who has started businesses, I've got a small film company that has sold films to Lifetime TV, creating jobs and having to innovate. I can say this as an entrepreneur and as a guy who grew up in a household where my dad was an entrepreneur and had a small machine shop in Westmont, New Jersey. Not every entrepreneur starts a business thinking that is the golden parachute and I'm going to hit the lottery and make $10 million. Actually, most would just like to pay their bills and live a nice lifestyle. And when you think about what entrepreneurs have to go through in this state in order to start a business, in order to be innovative, in order to let their own creative opportunity come out and create jobs, they're up against a government that won't get out of the way. And as an entrepreneur, I can tell you the most important thing that you ought to hear from your next governor is get the government the hell out of our way and let us do what we do best, which is create jobs and build a business. Government should not, Stevie said it. Government should not be picking winners and losers. Government should be creating the opportunity through cutting regulation, lowering taxes, and then creating that pipeline of students. Why are we not talking to 14-year-old kids in high school about the ones that have the aptitude to turn the wrench or drive the truck or become the next pipe fitter, iron worker? That's what we ought to be doing. And it can be done. And it's not going to be done by spending money. It's going to be done by changing the mindset in this state. Right now, we have a state government that leans toward government solutions. Government doesn't innovate. Entrepreneurs and business leaders, they're the ones who innovate, and they can be encouraged and incentivized and made prosperous if government would just get out of the way.
Okay, so I'm so impressed with all the agreement going on up here, everybody. So questions from the audience time? Oh, wow, look at that. There's a young man right here who I've heard of before. Tom, please introduce yourself when you ask your question.
Hi, I'm Tom Breck, and I'm with the State Chamber of Commerce. It was great to hear all this dialogue about helping the business community and making our economy better. But all these things need to be done in a coordinated way. Prior to taking over the chamber, I was a banker, financed tens of thousands of companies with loans, and the one common characteristic of all those companies was they had a business plan. What New Jersey does not have and has never had is an economic plan to coordinate all these efforts. About 3 weeks ago, after a lot of prodding to the governor, he signed an executive order creating an economic council. This is the first time this has ever happened in the state of New Jersey. Part of that economic council mandates that on a quarterly basis, the business community and the government meet to talk about issues to promote, retain, and advance the business community of New Jersey. It is a great start to something that could happen because it's going to create constructive dialogue mandated that has never happened in the state of New Jersey before.
So my question to all of you is very simple. As governor, you can undo an executive order. But as governor, I would hope that this council makes sense because it can create an economic plan with visionary goals under which every one of the things you talked about could be tactics. So my question is very simple. As governor, would you at least continue to promote this economic council? And secondly, if you thought it was strong enough, would you codify it and try to propose legislation to make it more formal?
I guess we'll start with Sean Spiller this time.
Okay. I mean, short answer is yes. It seems like an opportunity for a governor coming in to see how effective it's being and the conversations that are happening. And certainly I'd be supportive of that. But I put in the broader context also as I'm listening to you make your statement, which flipped into a question at the end. I like that. But really was, we don't have a transportation plan. We don't have I could go down the list of things that we're having conversations around. What are we doing in terms of expanding roadways versus investing in NJ Transit versus, it seems a lot of it is done in silos. A lot of it's done piecemeal. When we don't have that broader conversation and that longer term planning, it does cause problems. So certainly I think we need that, not just in the spaces you're describing, but also more broadly, because we've got a lot of different spaces where we are pulled in different directions. We are not going to say on a whim, but we are then, shooting from the hip in terms of where we're going and which direction. And certainly that's hard to plan for, certainly for the business community for sure. But I think also for residents that are looking to see how are we tying all these things together, how are we smartly investing our dollars as a state to comprehensively look at our challenges and certainly support our residents and businesses.
Okay, I guess I'll keep going in order. Steve, I guess I'll go to you and keep moving around.
Tom, yeah, it's long overdue. And, but I would like, the reports when you meet should be public too. The public should see the work that the committee's doing and guide us, but that's an easy answer. It's yes.
Wow, one word answer, man. That's special.
Jack. I believe in short.
Short answer is yes, Tom. But let me say this. I don't think you should be running for governor unless you have your own vision and your own plan on how to make New Jersey one of the best places in the country to do business. Conversely, I refuse to be the governor of what is known as the worst place in the country to do business. So I'm all for constructive criticism. I always say the first job of any elected official is to listen. I've always prided myself on being a good listener. But I'm bringing a plan and a vision to the table that in partnership with this economic council, we're going to turn it into reality here in New Jersey. The word you didn't use, which bugs the hell out of me, is study. I don't want to do another study. 4 years goes by quickly. We'll be 2 years in. Before you know it, it'll be re-election time. I think we all know what needs to be done here in New Jersey. There's things that we can do on day one, and there's things that I can do in partnership with the legislature on day two. So I'm all for the Economic Council as long as it doesn't lead to, as we say, paralysis by analysis. And let's work together and get it done on behalf of New Jersey. Steve?
Yeah, Tom, the short answer is yes, but I'm going to expand a little bit and go back to what I said earlier. That the best indicator of how somebody will act in the future is what they have done in the past. I'm running to be a different type of governor, and I'm running a different type of campaign. Let me start with what I've done. In Jersey City, when I came in there, we redid the master plan, economic plan, transportation plan, and we systematically executed on all of those things, and Jersey City is better for it. The campaign we're running is different because if you spent some time on our website, you would see that we are in painstaking detail as far as a roadmap that we will move forward with on everything. Most people just talk in platitudes. They tell you because there's a risk every time you tell somebody in detail in the campaign what they're going to do. So they basically ends up, what's your education policy? The answer is education is good. Everybody should have an education. What's your crime policy? Crime is bad. You need to get crime down. But our transportation plan, as an example, was touched on. It's 18 pages. It's based on experience because we've had more experience on this than anybody in New Jersey on the municipal level. We're in the ferry business. We're in the bike business. We're in the microtransit business, unfortunately, because of New Jersey Transit's failings. So we outline everything. So the short answer is yes, I do think an economic plan is vital to moving forward. I would say yes, I have a track record of doing this stuff and executing on it. And yes, if you look at what we've outlined on each specific issue, it is like no other candidate. It is in painstaking detail, specifics on what we'll be able to do. You may not agree with a lot of it. Some of it you will. But it is there in black and white what kind of governor I'm going to be if elected. Bill?
So there were a couple questions, I think, that some of you answered. Let me give you one short answer for one of your questions, Tom. No. And the no is that there's no way we should be wrangling over codifying a meeting between the governor and the business community. Is anybody else as disturbed as I am that we needed an executive order to get the governor and the Trenton government to meet with business? What you ought to expect from your next governor is a promise that instead of hiring a bunch of woke academics to run the government, that you'll go to the business community first. If we're going to codify anything, if we're going to make anything work in this state, we better have stakeholders in every department of government. There ought to be folks that are in the trades sitting at the DOT, sitting at the DEP. We ought to have teachers who sit on the Department of Education. We need actual stakeholders. Now, the short answer to will you meet with them? Well, Tom, you and I have talked about this. I think it's a great opportunity to have that first sit down, but it's not lost on me that New Jersey is so far off track that you had to beg and plead and fight for 6 years to get the governor to say, sure, let's have a meeting with business. My goodness, we ought to have a government that is comprised of entrepreneurs and business leaders and innovators. There should not be this divide between government and this room of great leaders in the business community. We got to tie it together. And I can promise you this, as governor, we're going to go right past all the woke academics and we're going to go right into the business community and say, what do you need? You're the stakeholder. How do we make it better? And some of the plans we got to scrap. The energy master plan, total disaster, and never accounts for the end user, the business whose costs are going through the roof, the homeowner whose costs are going through the roof. Instead, we have all of this government gobbledygook that makes a nice soundbite, maybe makes a nice flyer for re-election, but doesn't get the job done.
All right, there's a question over here.
Hi, thank you. Megan Tavernier with the New Jersey Association for the Education of Young Children. The access and affordability of childcare and early learning is being discussed by candidates across the aisle as a vital component to our state's economy. Can you speak to how you will address the compensation crisis of the early care and education workforce, knowing that childcare needs to be funded as a public good and that the average salary for New Jersey K-12 teachers is currently $80,000 a year compared to our early educators only making $32,000 a year?
All right, Steve Sweeney, I guess I'll start with you and work our way down here.
Not Sean. Okay. Look, I'm proud that we started to expand pre-K. And we've had a large expansion of pre-K to try to help families. It's not the end all to be all. Cost is cost. We know that. But it comes down to budget decisions. And this is something that has to be discussed. There's a limited amount of dollars. And anybody says they're going to give you what you want, they're not being honest with you, because I've been at that table when you have to make decisions on some things that you don't want to cut, some things you like. But no one could disagree at all about childcare. You know what I mean? It's not affordable. So finding, again, priorities of funding is critically important. But like I said, I do think pre-K helps some, because we're getting kids educated sooner. And look, a crazy idea. I would love to have children from birth going to school, from birth, because my daughter did early intervention. She was a preemie, and my baby learned. We taught her how to teach her everything because she had Down syndrome, and she had to be how to sit up, how to crawl. She learned everything. But she learned. And what you find out is 85% of a human's brain develops from birth to 5 years old. So going and getting kids sooner makes a huge difference in their lives. And again, Sean, because of his job, he knows kids that go to pre-K score higher in tests. They seem to be more well adjusted to controversy. There's been all kinds of studies on this. The earlier we can get children, the better it will be. But we got to find ways to fund it.
Sean.
Yeah, so specifically, I'll agree with much of that there. I think we've seen the expansion in quality early education, which has been absolutely a tremendous success. It's not everywhere yet. It's not as fast as it needs to be. And certainly, as I talk to Montclair residents who are still paying the $20,000 for childcare and then $10,000 early care, aftercare, it's an expensive piece. And that doesn't even address, as you noted, some of the compensation for those who are doing the work as well, specifically. I agree with the Senate President that we've got to expand that. We have to expand it for a number of reasons. Number one, it's cost effective, right? When we invest in our students at an early age, as they move through that system, it is way less expensive when they get to me as a high school teacher. We don't have to have 5 people in a classroom trying to offer that assistance, trying to help people catch up because they got what they needed earlier. That's just a smart investment over time. It's good for everybody in this room when we can create a workforce that's ready to go, to meet the needs and certainly, adapt to the changing workforce demands that we see now, right? So for all those reasons, it matters. And as we expand that, and certainly on the family side with what child tax credits and other pieces give more dollars in their pockets so that they can pay dollars to those who are doing some of the work, that's important. But I think the more we can expand quality early education and bring people into that fold, and at some of those higher salaries and other pieces that you note, that's going to have tremendous benefits over the lifetime for that individual, meaning that student, but certainly everybody working in that sector as well, and all the businesses and our residents who are going to benefit from the end product, the end person who comes out who's going to be well ready for our society.
Bill? Taxpayers should absolutely not be on the hook for universal daycare. And, all due respect to the senator, I don't think I like the idea at all of talking about starting education at birth, not just because I've seen what they're teaching in some of these classrooms, but because we ought to be empowering mom and dad. Where are mom and dad in this picture? There are plenty of parents out there that need a lot of help. There are plenty of parents out there that would say, I'd rather make the choice to stay home if there was a sufficient tax credit to be a work-at-home mom or dad, because how many of our moms and dads are out there paying for daycare and it's most of what their second job, sometimes their third job takes in just to meet those bills. The liberal answer to that is, well, just have the government pay for it. Well, there's no such thing as the government paying for it. You're paying for it. And we need a mindset change in this state. We need to empower parents more. We ought to be incentivizing work-at-home parents who want to make that decision to raise their kids. And as far as a quality education, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, maybe not the first one, but I will say it. I believe our teachers are underpaid. Every time I speak to a group of teachers and I find out what they're making, and then the fact that they're pulling out $75 a week in order to pay for school supplies for their kids, it's outrageous. We have an upside-down system that caters to professional bureaucrats and superintendents making between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. We've got to take a look at that system and say, how much waste is in this? I'm hearing a lot of giving up here. Oh, it should cost $600 million a year, but it costs $7 billion. We better talk about restructuring that debt and working on what we can do to change that $175 billion in unfunded future mandates, because, guys, a $60 billion budget, not sustainable. Why? Because just in the year between 21 and 22, this state lost $3.5 billion in adjusted gross income. So we can put all the nice ideas out there, but as Milton Friedman said, people vote with their feet. And right now, 7 out of 10 moves are out of this state. So for all the gimmicks that are out there, people are leaving. And I've been listening to them for 10 years on the air. And I can tell you, there hasn't been a person that's called that doesn't have an exit plan. We better fix it, and we got to fix it fast. The next governor is going to have 18 months to get that job done. Steve Phillip.
I appreciate the question. It's important to me. There are some things I'm going to say that in the nature of this campaign, and you're going to agree with me. I mean, some of the things about taxes and restructuring government and accountability, and we could be on the same page. There's some things that I'm going to say that you may not like, and I'm going to be true to who I am and to our campaign is, regardless. And I know the room that I'm in, and some of the things that I'm going to tell you, this room may not inherently agree with me on, but I do believe in my heart it is the right approach. The child care issue is a fundamental national crisis, and it is really on many ways on municipal and governors to find accountability and responsible ways to solve that. I told you earlier that I have done painstaking detail based on learned experiences and things that I see in Jersey City directly with people in that city and the challenges. There is a whole part of our platform in detail outlining the first year of life agenda because it is important to me and I understand that. There are things that you can do. First, around compensation. There's no question that the compensation is low, and the way to correct that is continually pushing up on the minimum wage. I know some of you did not like that. However, if you are fair, New Jersey was not bold when we got to $15 minimum wage. We got there and many of you pushed back, but there were 20 other states that were there already. And we have a very, very high cost of living here. And that upward pressure is important to the lowest paid employees, not the people sitting in this room, but it matters to them ultimately. Secondly, I would tell you the paid leave conversation. That first year is crucial. It is crucial to a child's development. And New Jersey can and should do better on paid leave in order to facilitate. And it is an easy way to address the child care issue. Third, I would tell you, as you talk about the lowest income people, the labyrinth of incentives at the state, and again, I know this because we live it in Jersey City, is a mess. You need to streamline that to make it easier for people to get the incentives and benefits that are there from the federal and state government, and the state and the governor should take accountability for that. And then finally, I would tell you that how you deal with child care centers and how the state incentivizes them to open is totally backwards. You are in an attendance system here on compensation for those early childhood centers. And the reality is that if you move like many other states to an enrollment-based system, you will have more of them opening because there's more certainty around what kind of compensation they will get. And the more seats that open, the more opportunities they are. There is a shortage in this state of seats. People in this room may not have those same challenges because some of you own businesses, you're in higher paying jobs. But the childcare issue for the lower portion of the economic tranche here in New Jersey is an absolute mess. And I'm telling you that those four things do have a cost. They have a cost that you will not like, but they are important to having a better workforce. We've sat up here, talked about the workforce, investing in this, investing in that, doing this, doing that. You got to be reasonable. At the end of the day, when you talk about childcare, somebody has to pay for it. And you cannot just say, have a work from home job. That is not a solution, ultimately. That is not a reasonable solution. It's a talking point. It's not a reasonable solution. I'm telling you that those four things are important to me. They are in black and white, like I said. You could take the time to read it. I have outlined a first year of life agenda because I think it's important. And those are things I will change and push for if I'm elected governor. You may not like it, but I'm telling you that it is things that I believe in. Somebody likes it.
All right, Jack.
We know that after housing, the single greatest expense line for any parent or parents is childcare. And so, as governor, I'll do all I can to make sure the federal government recognizes that with the appropriate child care tax credits. I will do all that I can to establish a very, very effective child tax credit program here in New Jersey. Let me say this about, you never hear an argument from me or anyone as to the value of pre-K or early childhood education. But that doesn't mean we should just necessarily add it to every one of our 600 school districts. What a lot of people don't know is the business space that's owned by more females than any other in the state are childcare centers. And we're putting them right out of business when we create a pre-K within the public school system. I would much prefer us to use a voucher system, depending on what your gross income is as a parent or parents, that you would get a voucher that you could then take to a privately owned child care center. I think that's another approach that we should consider rather than just the blanket approach of establishing a pre-K in every single school district all around the state. So those are some of the things that we can do to provide some relief with regard to child care expenses.
Thank you. All right. Unfortunately, the time has come for closing statements. Although we've only scratched the surface on so many important topics, I appreciate what you all have done so far. So I'll ask you all for your closing remarks. And Assemblyman Chitterelli, I'll start with you.
Well, then, many thanks to all of you for being in attendance today. Many thanks to NJBIA for what it does on behalf of its membership and advocating for a stronger business community here in New Jersey. You know, the Chitterellis have been here for 100 years. My grandfather was a very successful contractor for the water company. My parents were very, very successful restaurant owners. I'm a two-time successful business owner from Main Street. We haven't had a governor with that kind of background before. I think it brings a very unique perspective to the job of making New Jersey a better place to do business. And I will tell you, the one thing that I feel strongest about as governor is making New Jersey a better place to do business. I really do believe of all the challenges we face, and I'll tackle them all, the one that is the easiest of all the heavy lifts is making New Jersey a better place to do business, and that creates a tide really that lifts all boats. But let me speak to something else that I think is critically important to the business community. We need a hands-on CEO governor in this state. It's a $57 billion enterprise with 65,000 employees and 9.3 million customers. And you need a governor who's going to appoint a cabinet that is going to run that ship each and every day so it works on behalf of the businesses and the citizens of this state. And right now, we don't have that. I take great pride out of operational efficiencies. My companies were extremely well-oiled. And I don't want to be the governor of a state that isn't well-oiled, or that there isn't some type of very synergistic relationship between departments, as I described earlier today, for example, the Department of Labor and Department of Education. So it's not just the policies we'll put in place to make this a better place to do business. You want a state government that's going to be a partner, and it can't be a good partner unless it's a well-oiled machine. As your governor, I will take great pride in the way we run our shop here in New Jersey. And one other thing I just want to touch upon that'll be a much more expanded conversation. Our suburbs are magnificent, but suburbs are not the engines of economic growth. Thriving cities are the engines of economic growth. And we do not see economic vibrancy in places like Newark or Trenton or Atlantic City. Do we have some pockets of success in some cities? You bet we do. But on another day, I hope to discuss with you my plan to revitalize, create a renaissance, if you will, in our urban centers so that we can get this state economy firing on all cylinders. Thank you again for your attention today.
Thank you, Mayor Fulop.
Let me say thank you to Michelle and all of you for being a part of this today. If there's one thing that I would hope you take away regarding me, and I don't know many of you personally, I hope to meet you, is that we're running a different type of campaign. Change the system of government, create more accountability, and then ultimately very, very detailed on policy and move things forward in a concrete way similar to what we did in Jersey City by outlining in detail what we will be able to do. Not every municipality is Jersey City, they're each different, but the same playbook as it relates to the thought process on detailed policy is what's important here, because we think that you deserve it. I said earlier that for 20 years you've heard the same thing, and for 20 years you've got the same outcome. And we are a home rule where municipalities have a disproportionate amount of influence here in New Jersey. And that's why I'm telling you that if you do the same thing and elect somebody that doesn't have experience on the municipal level understanding this in painstaking detail, you will get the same outcome. Phil Murphy, 8 years, but he came from where? He was the ambassador from Germany. No experience on the ground here when he got here, learning on the job. Prior to that, Chris Christie, U.S. attorney, no experience understanding the minutia of day-to-day being an administrator in a city and the challenges that you deal with working with the business community, accountability as an executive. Prior to that, John Corzine, no experience with regards to being an executive and understanding the details of minutia of government. Florio didn't come either. Jim McGreevy was there for a small period of time, so we'll give that a pass. But the reality is, what I'm going to tell you is that if you do the same thing and you elect the same type of person that doesn't understand these, that isn't willing to outline for you in detail, not in platitudes, that isn't talking to you about wholesale change to some of the things that you're concerned about and isn't honest with you on the things that they're going to do that you may not like, then they're not the person for you ultimately. Then you're going to be in the same seat in 4 years and again in 8 years talking about the same exact issues. I hope you take some time to learn a little bit about my background, whether it's the Marine Corps, whether it's the private sector, whether it's being the mayor of Jersey City, and learn a little bit more of what we're going to do for Jersey City, do for New Jersey. It is, I think, a different type of opportunity for the state, and I hope you join us along the way.
Bill Spadia.
Steve, every person you mentioned there, it was somehow connected to government. So as the only non-government, non-political outsider entrepreneur, I can tell you that our state's going to be a lot better off when we have leaders that are actually innovators, that come from the private sector and understand what it's like to manage a P&L, manage millions of dollars for corporations, actually start a business and sign the front of the paycheck instead of just the back of the paycheck. We're going to need that. And I think a lot of what our state and perhaps our country has been missing is that we have people that are in politics because politics have become their career. I haven't spent 35 years in politics. I haven't spent time as a mayor or an elected official. What I have done is spend time as a Marine, as a father, as a business innovator and a leader, and now as a communicator. And I can tell you, as a communicator, I've been listening for 10 years. And New Jersey, there's no buffer between me and the audience. And I've heard all of it. And I can tell you, most people in New Jersey are sick and tired of all of the political talking points and the rhetoric. It's very easy to talk about clean energy. You know what, though? Every time we hear about clean energy and green energy, nobody ever talks about how much it's going to cost you as a consumer. No one ever talks about the actual efficiency. You know, wind and solar are disasters when it comes to cost and efficiency. We ought to be innovating into nuclear power. We should be building micronuclear plants. We ought to be refurbishing and reinvesting billions of dollars in our natural gas infrastructure. We ought to be taking a page out of what Texas is doing with waste management, harnessing that methane coming out of the landfills and actually powering homes. We need innovators. And when I say work at home, let me be very clear. There's a label that is out there for parents that stay home to raise their kids. They're called stay-at-home moms, typically. I think that job is one of the hardest that you have to do. Any mom will tell you how hard that job is. And too many moms in this state have to not only work at home as mom and manager of the household, but then they have to go out and get an outside job because it's simply too expensive to live here. We need a governor who understands that. There ought to be tax incentives and credits to that family that makes a decision to say, we want to have one parent raising our kids. There's nothing wrong with incentivizing those kinds of choices, but we don't have any out-of-the-box thinkers because too many people, including everybody on both sides of the aisle in this field for governor in 2025, they think like government officials. We need someone to start thinking like New Jerseyans, like parents, like entrepreneurs, people who think on behalf of the people of New Jersey who just want their government to work for them. They want the Department of Labor to answer the phone. They want DOT and DEP to get out of the way so that we can do things like mitigate flooding by dredging our rivers. All of those things have to happen, but it's only going to happen when you get somebody outside of the system who is not afraid to be labeled and attacked and take all the hits on your behalf. And I strongly believe that I am that candidate, and I'm looking forward to many ongoing conversations with some of the great folks in this room. Thank you for having us.
All right, President Spiller.
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you all for being here, and thank you for having us today. I agree with everything I've heard so far in terms of, look, this is about the experience that someone is coming to this position with. It's about their lived experience. It's about the experience they've had. I shared with you a little bit of my childhood and certainly how I got started here. But I'll also say this. I think experience does matter in terms of not only what do you want to do, but understanding that you have to know how to do it to get it done in New Jersey. I say that as somebody who is a mayor and council person for 12 years, has learned that experience and understands what it takes to be in those spots where you've got to navigate systems, where you've got to change systems, where you've got to make sure that you're dealing with challenges that affect the residents each and every day. But I also say this as somebody who, as a high school science teacher, right in the classroom for 15 years or so, I understand when I'm talking to families, and oftentimes many of them small business owners or others, and they're sharing their challenges and experiences and what they're trying to do to support their families. That's what we see each and every day. I share it as somebody who is the head of an organization for, over a decade now, and certainly as president, with over 400 employees, where, we're trying to figure out all those challenges around healthcare costs and, the dynamic of work from home and making sure your business can work and support your customers, right? Your users, your members. These are spaces that I think experience does matter, right? And understanding the challenges, as I go back to this, as somebody with 2 young kids myself, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, living the New Jersey that we're in and understanding all the different dynamics from all those different perspectives, somebody who's been in the north part of the state to the south and as educators every single spot in between, understands that, hey, listen, this at the core is still about making sure New Jersey is someplace that's affordable, that people can maybe have a moment to take advantage of the great things that we have to offer, can support their families without 2, 3, 4 jobs, can be a business that's not getting crushed by the cost of ever-rising healthcare. All the things that we are always juggling with our different roles and positions matter. They matter to keeping this state a great place to be. And certainly, I can tell you, and I humbly ask for your support to be the next governor of New Jersey, because I do agree. It's time to do something different. We can't constantly elect the same thing and expect some different outcome. And I think that finally having an educator who could be the next governor is something that would bring great benefit to this state and would allow us to interact in ways that I think serves our communities. And certainly with those additional experiences as a mayor, a council person, as a president of an organization, I think all bring those skills that are going to be very, very important as we face shrinking budgets, challenges at the federal level, and so many other things that we don't even know what will be coming our way.
Senator Sweeney.
And I know many of you in the room. You know me. I got a history. I have a voting history. And it's easy to say minimum wage wasn't good enough, not fast enough, but we did it. We put it within indexing. We got it done. Paid family leave came from my 75-day experience in the neonatal unit, watching families and living it myself. I'm proud of those things. I'm also proud that we weren't afraid to take on tough issues. In fact, sometimes the state police had to escort me through the halls of Trenton because I was willing to take on the fight because it was worth fighting for. The people in New Jersey are absolutely worth fighting for. The state's worth fighting for. Look, again, we had a big fight at one point with the teachers, right? We got beyond it. We negotiated a new healthcare plan. I was proud of that. We fixed the pension system. Did anyone ever dream that we could get $7.2 billion into the pension fund? The answer is no. That killed us with Wall Street. What you get with me is I'm someone that gets in the weeds. We did Path to Progress. We worked with the teachers union to do a bill to start consolidations of schools. Good news, we got 70 school districts that are actually studying consolidation now. We had 3 school districts last year actually voted, the individual towns, to merge. So you work with the groups that you're in front of to find the solution. We're never going to agree on everything, but I am the most qualified person, and nothing against Teacher Sean because I love him and my son's one. It's time for a union ironworker. Thank you.
All right. So on behalf of Michelle and the BIA, thank you all for this outstanding panel today. Thank you very much.